Hi, welcome to the course. My name is Fuad, and this video series will help you understand your reading material, assessment, and health professions education. Now, I'll point out to you in this series what's important, what's not so important. So, let's go right to it. Now, we will go to some basic terms and definitions that we will be using quite a lot in our class, in our module. Okay, and there are about nine, I think, nine terms and definitions that you need to be familiar with. And the first is competency-based education. Competency-based education closely linked with outcome-based education. Some is a big word, especially in also in Malaysia in higher education, and something that you need to be familiar with. What is competency-based education? What is outcomes-based education? And it here it is said that it focuses on ensuring that all of our learners reach a defined level of achievement that will enable them to provide safe and effective care. What's important is that the achievement have been outlined, especially in competency-based education. We tell learners that what you will be able to do after you finish, not that what we will do to you, but what you will be able to do at the end. Okay, the focus is more on the learners, and the focus is more on the competency rather than the time. So if you are able to achieve such competencies even faster than the rest, then perhaps you can progress. This is the ideal situation. Okay, so you have courses where the learners can each progress on their own pace based on the achievement of competencies. So that is what this chapter, or no, this paragraph explains. And again, it mentions in the top paragraph in page 8, many excellent taxonomies of competencies and roles have been developed. So again, we are talking about what? We have talked about Miller's pyramid, remember? We have talked about Bloom's taxonomy, and institutions, medical institutions, and organizations throughout the world, internationally, have set down, for example, in the US, in the States, they call the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education, the ACGME. They have sat down and discussed. For example, you have the CanMeds, the Canadians, they have sat down, the Australians. What have they discussed? They have defined for a medical professional, what is it, what are the competencies that they are expected to have. So a feature of almost all of them, or all of them rather, is that it does not just consist of knowledge and clinical skills, but also encompasses soft skills, professional skills, teamwork skills, and so on and so forth. Okay, so again, people have clearly written and in black and white in documents what is it that is expected of a medical professional. And when you have the what's, it becomes very easy to plan and to choose the method of assessment, the how, the assessment. Okay, what about in Malaysia? In Malaysia, we do not have a separate document just outlining the medical profession, what are the competencies expected of them, because in Malaysia, we are governed by the Ministry of Education. However, the Ministry of Education have sat down and and written quite a comprehensive document regarding the outcomes of uh, candidates, especially at the higher education level. What we have talked about previously, what is known as the MQF document, which is now at the version 2 stage. Okay, so that is something that you would candidates of this course needs to be familiar with. Okay, so here also, if you go on, it talks about some other concepts related to competency-based education. Is number one is the EPA, the entrustable professional activities. What are EPAs? You can read it in more detail here. Is that how do we measure the progress of a candidate in clinical skills, in clinical competency, is by their attainment, by their ability to perform skills, or by to perform activities which are expected of them, that they can do it alone, they can do it unsupervised, they can be entrusted to do it. Okay, so a strength of these EPAs, the entrustable professional activities, is that it combines parts of the competencies, because often in the competency documents they separate out, of course you have cognitive knowledge, you have professional skills, you have teamwork skills, you have soft skills, and so on and so forth. But then how are these combined? How and the EPAs do that. They combine, for example, is given here, example of a competency is ability to gather a history and perform a physical exam. So under this EPA, ability to take a history and perform physical examination, then it comes, you have to have cognitive knowledge, you have to have knowledge of how to perform a physical examination, and you have to have good communication skills, and so on and so forth. So for each EPA, you can cross check, you can make a table on one axis as all the EPAs, and another axis all the competencies. So for each EPA, you can tick, for this EPA we need this and this and this competency. For EPA, for the second EPA, we need this and this and this competency. So it makes it easier for planners of assessment to choose, and to choose methods, and to decide when someone has been able to attain the EPAs, and it clearly shows what competencies are needed. So you can read a bit more about EPAs in this section. It gives also it talks about milestones, and give you a sample milestone, so you can read about this. It is very common in Western health professionals education, but it is starting to be used in Malaysia, so something that you need to be familiar with. All right, now the second group of terminologies, terms and definitions, is instruction and assessment. Okay, now what's important here is for you to realize that number one, it mentions that assessment and instruction are intimately related. So it's a good place for me to introduce to you the concept of instructional alignment or constructive alignment. something introduced previously, where we have to see, number one is the learning outcomes, the competencies, the objectives. Number two is the teaching and learning methodologies. They must match the outcomes. If you say you want your candidates' outcomes is that they have good teamwork skills, then the teaching and learning must incorporate something which will promote teamwork, as well as in the assessment. The third point in the triangle, you have the outcomes, you have the teaching and learning, and the third point of the triangle is the assessment. The assessment must also reflect, or must also be able to assess teamwork skills. If that is your objective, then your assessment must be there. And that is what we mean by the constructive alignment. Okay, so it says here instruction and assessment are intimately related. That's what it means. Okay, and it says that teaching, learning, and assessment form a closed circle. All right, so it goes on there, blah blah blah. You can read more about that. Okay, and third is assessment, measurement, and tests. Okay, it, it discusses again the definition of assessment. It says there the standards define assessment very broadly to include just about any method used to collect any type of information or data with which to make inferences about people, objects, or programs. Okay, as we have discussed before. The focus of this book is on the assessment of learners, so that excludes programs and products. Okay, we use the term assessment to cover almost everything we do to measure the educational learning or progress of our students or other trainees. And then it discusses the 3 points. Remember what's important in the definition. Embedded within this definition are 3 important characteristics, and you need to pay attention to this. Okay, assessment is a systemic process. Okay, is a very deliberate, is a very evidence-based, is a very purposeful process for obtaining a sample of behaviors or characteristics under structured conditions, meaning that it's not haphazard. Okay, to make inferences about individuals. Okay, so in other words, regardless of the type of assessment administered, the questions, cases, or encounters observed are samples of knowledge, skills, and attitudes of learners that are systematically captured. Okay, as such, careful sampling is an important property of sound assessment. Okay, so again, it emphasizes that the definition of assessment, and it says here at the last sentence of the first paragraph, assessment is also used synonymously with the term test. So don't worry about what's the difference between test and assessment. It's used synonymously. Okay, what about measurement? Measurement, the following paragraph, refers to some type of quantification used as an assessment. Quantification is a process by which at the end of it you get some numbers. That's measurement. And by the numbers you attach some value. If more than 50 you pass, less than 50 you fail. That's evaluation, and we focus on educational evaluation, not program evaluation. Okay, so it talks about manifest variables and latent variables, so you might read more on that. Okay.